All right, brothers and sisters of sobriety. My name is Vinny. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
And I'm Sam. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
And this is Tenacious Recovery. You got to be tenacious about your recovery to keep your sobriety. And we are coming in today from South Philadelphia, South Philly. We are a traveling podcast and we make our rounds all over the country. Today, we are in South Philly and we are with a guy named Banjo Bob. Say hi, brother.
Hi, everyone. My name's Bob and I'm an alcoholic.
My man. It's great pleasure for us to finally get together with you. You were on my list from the moment I decided I wanted to do this podcast, and it's my pleasure to have you on. I know you got a great story, so let's just dive into it. Take us back to the beginning.
Well, the very first drink, I was just a kid running around polishing off the half empties at a family party. But it was probably in high school where my drinking really started. And that would be on the high school, on the weekends, hanging on the corners with the guys, quarts of beer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't make 40s back then.
No, we didn't.
They made quarts because that's what I drank.
Yeah,
quarts.
Yes.
That's right. The bad beer was about, if I recall, the beer that didn't taste all that great was about 80 or 90 cents.
Oh, it was definitely less than a buck.
For like a good quart of beer,
Yeah.
what would be
Buck
considered good would be like $1.25. That was like a Budweiser or
Or like
Miller,
a quart of Bud, right?
Miller Highlights,
Yeah.
Budweiser, yeah. And if you got into the stronger stuff like Colt 45, might have been a little more because you knew you were going to get, more of a buzz. So yeah, I was a quart guy myself.
So there was malt liquor. It just wasn't in a 40-ounce bottle.
No. Actually, Old English was always a 40.
Okay.
Yeah, but Colt 45 was still a quart. Old English, as far as I remember, going way back, that was always
40
a 40-ounce bottle. Yeah, but but quarts were the thing back then.
I drank Mickey's.
And during the summer, it would be quarts and shorts.
That's right.
Quarts and shorts.
Quarts and shorts on the court playing basketball. Yeah, been there and done that. I look back on those days as being very fond memories, but I know I've been sober for almost 38 years, and sometimes you look back and all you can see are the good times.
Right.
But really, we were hurting back then.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And how about you? I mean,
The exact same thing. You look back fondly at, like I said, quarts and shorts. And during the winter, not everyone had a set of gloves, so you shared gloves. Yeah, you had your gloves
In the
around.
park, yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, for us, it was on the corner.
Yep.
So, but obviously, I didn't know at that time it was going to be the start of a slippery slope into insanity. But there were some fun times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, you could always look back on the good times, but when you really study that past, there's, the fun lasts but so long, and then, when the bad times surpass the good, it's time to do something about it.
When I'm actively drinking, I do this thing that people who love me, anyone who's ever loved me, whether it was my wife or my mother or my father, I do this thing where I disappear, right? And I'll meet up with a group of friends, even as far back as like 12, 13 years old. We would be in the park drinking, and they would all go home, and I would just have to find the next place to disappear to. And it was never fun for me because I always took it too far. I never really had the opportunity to call it a day and go home and pass out because I was too full of fear to go back home, or really even too full of fear for the party to stop,
Right on. So take us back. Let's hear a little bit of your story.
Well, it was, so I said drinking mostly in high school. Now, so my parents didn't have much. I have 7 siblings, and they were both children of immigrants. Both sets of my grandparents came over from Ireland, and they knew one of the ways to make it in this country by education. So they sent me to a private high school, and I never felt a part of. And actually, those kids, they made it sure known that we weren't a part of.
Gotcha.
That they had money, we didn't, and so the drinking helped me to escape. I only drank on the weekends, and there's a reason for that. Because I wasn't allowed out on school nights.
There you go.
And I'm sure if I was allowed out on school nights, I would have drank. So I drank on the weekends. And then when it came time to graduate, I knew that I didn't want to further my education. And I knew that would cause some problems at home because of the sacrifice my parents made. So I enlisted in the Air Force.
Terrific. I'll bet you they really taught you how to drink.
Well, that's where the drinking took off. So now this is the 70s. Vietnam had just ended, so the military wasn't popular. But I thought that was my only option. Like, I'm 17, I have no money, I got no skills. So I joined, and I go through all this training, and that's where the drinking took off. Like, obviously in basic, there's no training. Tech school started some drinking. But then once I got sent to my first duty station, on duty, did the job. Off duty, getting loaded. And
where were you?
I had started off in Texas, Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. This was after I'd done my tech school. Then I got sent to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. And that was a beautiful time.
I'll bet.
The dollar was strong. Marcos was in power. They loved the Americans. It was a great time.
The weather was always good.
Weather was spectacular.
Yeah.
It's a shame that base is no longer there. They had a volcano that destroyed the base and they closed it. But
wow.
That was a beautiful time. The Philippines in the late 70s, early 80s was a beautiful assignment.
How about that? Where'd you go after that?
I was in the Middle East. I was in the Sinai, part of a multinational peacekeeping force. I was there for 9 months and came home, and I finished up my assignment in South Dakota.
Wow.
Yeah, Ellsworth Air Force Base. And a funny story about that, I come down, we're out drinking, and I coming down the road one night, and I turned around, and I see Mount Rushmore. I never knew where Mount Rushmore was. I thought it was like in Colorado. I don't know. Here I was.
You were right there.
I was like miles away. I turn around. The presidents are all lit up. I'm all lit up.
That's great. That's awesome.
He turned around. I mean, when I think of the Dakotas, all I think about is Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, right.
That and Carson Wentz.
Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Carson Wentz, too.
Well, he was North Dakota.
He was North Dakota, right. Yeah, you didn't know you were living among the presidents for your whole time stationed there.
No.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So my God. Yeah. So what was the drinking like on that base?
It was hardcore. It was because the elements were tough. We would go out to missile sites. It was we'd be on duty for 4, off duty for 4, and we'd go out. And so I was a cop in the Air Force. So we would go from missile site to make sure, in case the alarms went off, make sure things were safe, and we would just get loaded. Now, it was funny. I had some guys who would indulge in other substances. I never messed around with that. I was just that would come later.
Yeah.
But I was just drinking, and sometimes we take extra ammo and do some little shooting and
into the mountain.
Yeah,
blast into the mountain. That's fun. Definitely.
Yep. Beautiful times. Until they weren't.
Exactly.
And then you came back to South Philly?
When I got done, I came home. I enrolled in school. I went to St. Joe's. I took a couple civil service exams, and at the end of my freshman year, I got hired by the City of Philadelphia Police Department.
So you were a cop?
Correct.
In Philly?
Yes.
You were a cop down here, right?
No, most of my career was in North Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was in a citywide unit for a while, but most of my time was in North Philadelphia.
What'd you do in North Philly?
I actually drove a wagon. I drove a wagon for almost 10 years, and then I got into a plainclothes narcotics unit, and we could see where drinking took me.
100%, yeah.
I got you.
And I never did drugs. I never even smoked a joint. But when I was in uniform, I was squared away. Like, I would never drink on duty. Like, the leather was all shiny and whatnot. But once I got put in this plainclothes unit, I thought I drank on the job, and I would never do this. And I thought I needed to do this to maintain some sort of illusion. But I served with other men and women. They did the exact same job I did, and they didn't drink. And again, this is where, in retrospect, I can see where my drinking has progressed. They can go the 8-hour tour without the drink. Here I am drinking on the job. And then one night I was put in a position where I thought I needed to do other substances, and I did. And again, I served with men and women, did the exact same job I did, and they never did other substances. But that's where my drinking took me, the progression of alcoholism.
Gotcha. Why do you think you needed to partake in those substances on the job? Was the job hard and you need to loosen up? What was?
No, it was a difficult job, but in this particular case, I went in on a buy, and they weren't going to serve me. They said, "You're 5-0." I said, "I'm not," and I had already had some drinking in me, and so I indulged. I did a line, and I was off to the races. Now, my drug history is very short. It only lasted about a year and a half, 15, 16 months, but it progressed quickly.
Did that get you in trouble on the job?
Oh, yeah. Got me in trouble, guys. Got me in serious trouble. And it's funny the way I had gotten sober. An FBI agent stopped by and was talking to me, stopped by my house. And he had told me, he said, "You have a problem." And I thought he was talking about job-related. He says, "No." He said, "You have a problem with drinking." And I shrugged him off, And but long story short, I got sober shortly afterwards, and I realized then he was actually trying to 12-step me. He wasn't there in his professional capacity. He was there understanding that he was in the same shoes I was years before.
Solely out of personal concern?
Yeah, absolutely. So even though the seed was planted, I really didn't,
You weren't ready to hear it.
I wasn't ready to hear it. But it was Memorial Day weekend, 1988 was my final drink. And what had happened, I just holed up in a hotel, and I was drinking and doing other substances, and to the point I really contemplated suicide.
Wow.
And what had happened was, just not with this guy talking to me, but also about a month before, I was home from work, and there was an article in the Daily News. There was a series of questions. It said like alcohol problems, drug problems, marital problems, depression.
In the police department in general?
No, in your personal life. This was an article in the Daily News.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
just
reading,
a random article.
Yeah, and I'm reading it, and I'm 4 out of 5. I don't have marital problems because I'm single. So, but I cut that article out, and I stuck it in my wallet and continued on drinking. And at the end of my run at this hotel, where I contemplated suicide, I actually dialed this phone number up, and a woman told me to go to the hospital. Hahnemann Hospital. I drove over to Hahnemann. They admitted me to their 10th floor of their psychiatric unit. I was there for about 3 or 4 days. It got me stabilized. From there, I got transferred to the VA hospital out in West Philadelphia. I spent about 6 weeks in their flight deck. And from there, I got transferred to the VA hospital out in Coatesville, where I would spend another 6 weeks.
That's the big hospital, Coatesville.
Yeah, I was in their flight deck for a while, and then they put me into the alcohol and drug ward. And so all told, I spent almost 6 months in various VA hospitals, and I haven't had a drink since. And that was Memorial Day weekend, so I have a sobriety date of June 2nd of 1988.
Very good.
Yeah, just celebrated 36 years.
Congratulations on that.
Thank
That's a lot of great sobriety time. And I know you are in service constantly in the 12-step program and have been for 36 years or whatever.
Consistently, too.
Consistently.
One thing I've always had respect for
Absolutely.
Bob is that he has never, for as long as I've known him, which in the span of his entire sobriety isn't even that long, he has never skipped a beat, ever. It is one thing I have so much respect for you about.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I do it for one reason. Actually, the reasons have changed over the years. I remember getting in service because I was pushed in the service. I really was. And then I did it because the sponsor said you should do it. But then I got to enjoy it. And now, to be honest, I really see it as a sense of responsibility. I mean, I was 27 years old. I'm now 63. And I go to meetings, regular attendance of meetings, because I want to be there for the next 27-year-old dude.
Absolutely.
That's why.
The newcomers, we're there for the newcomers. We keep them they keep us fresh.
And
Basically.
I enjoy it. I really do. Like everything I do, I hang out with sober rock guys. Like, do I hang out with the Earth people? Sure. But most of my guys are sober guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We go to games together. I'm a season ticket holder for the Eagles and the Phillies.
So am I.
Yeah. I go with sober guys. Everything I do,
So the Earth guys, they're not in the program.
No, it's funny. So you'll get a kick out of this. So I'm a lifelong mummer, right? So the mummer.
Now explain mummer to people that are living in Australia.
Okay. So on New Year's Day in Philadelphia, we have the New Year's Day parade, and it's been going on since the 1700s. Well, actually, the official parade, the first official parade was in 1901. The city, because it was getting crazy in the 1800s, so the city wanted to organize the mayhem. So on New Year's Day, we have this parade. Mummers is actually derived from Mummus, who was the Greek god of ridicule. So that's where the word is derived from. So we trace our roots to antiquity.
Nice.
So what it is, it's kind of hard to describe, but I tell people it's like a combination of the Mardi Gras and the Full Monty. I mean,
That's a great way to describe it.
That's good.
I say we make the Mormons or those who don't indulge look like a bunch of lunatics. It's just crazy drinking, and so. What I used to do as a wench, I put on a satin dress, spray paint the boots gold, and go up the street with a brass band and just have a great time. But there was another part of the parade, the string bands.
Oh, yeah.
And I've always loved the music. When I was a kid, I remember sitting with my grandparents. We'd be listening to the albums. She loved the Furco string band.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We would listen to Joe's Boys on the record player. So, so I got sober in '88. I didn't do the 89 parade. The 90 parade, I went out with my old group, the Strutters. And coming down 2nd Street, so the parade goes up Broad Street. Back then it did. We have a different route now, but it goes up Broad Street to City Hall. Then you come down 2nd Street for the unofficial parade, the best part of the parade.
Yeah.
Sure.
So as I'm coming down 2nd Street with my group, I thought I could drink. I thought I could hide behind the anonymity of the makeup and the suit.
Sure.
And so I peeled off. I ran over to, there was a group, South Philly group, ran over, opened up the door, and they saw me in my full regalia.
In your full mummer suit.
They
Nice.
put their arms up. I said, no. And I gave them my name, and they said, oh, yeah, they didn't recognize me. And so the next year, I started a group, me and another guy called the 12 Steppers.
Nice.
Sober mummers. That's an oxymoron. That's
Yeah.
like jumbo shrimp.
Yeah.
Got that right.
And I was with those guys for 15 years. But you know how these guys are, that they wanted to practice, they wanted to build props. I just wanted to put a dress on and go
Right.
up the street.
You just wanted to have a good time.
So then I went to
That's funny.
I joined a wench brigade, Bryson. I was with them for 10 years. But in the back of my head, I always wanted to play an instrument. I played the guitar when I was in grade school, had lessons for a couple years. But these guys are phenomenal. So at a Flyers game, I'm a season ticket holder, guy sitting behind me, they're in the band, and we got to be friendly. And I said, listen, I'm going to take saxophone lessons. I'm going to join your band. And the one guy, he kind of humored me. He said, listen, don't take offense. You're an older guy. The sax players got to move around a lot. They dance. Why don't you learn how to play the banjo?
We're looking for a banjo player.
Right. Yeah.
So you just play chords. And I picked up the banjo, and it's incredible. So I picked it up at the age of 54. And this is the great thing about recovery, and there's so many things that I have done as a result of being sober that I just have a life beyond my wildest dreams. So not only am I a banjo member in the Avalon String Band, I am actually a member of the Musicians Union,
Right.
Local 77 in Philadelphia.
Very nice.
Now, I want just to be full disclosure here, being a member of the Musicians Union does not speak to the quality of my banjo playing.
Exactly.
It just means
you're part of the union, and you pay dues every month.
I feel like
Very
I've
nice.
watched you over the years and seen some progression, though.
Oh, yeah, there has been some progression, but I mean, I just love it. And I always say, whatever you did loaded, you can do sober. You can be better at it, but most of all, you can remember it.
Absolutely.
There's
There's no blackouts here.
No, none at all.
One thing about Bob, I'll say, who I've had a diverse relationship with over the course of what I'd say the last 6 or 7 years,
Yep.
is everything he does 100%. Just like I said, how he gets in service, he travels the country to speak. What position did you hold here at the string band?
I'm currently the chairman of the board. I've been previously vice president and the business manager.
Yeah. Everything he does, he is 100% invested in and will give you 100% of himself. You just have to get him to buy into it.
Right, exactly.
But once he's bought in, he is 150% in it. And it's something I've always admired about you. I'm almost attracted to the things you're attracted to solely how invested you are in them.
Well, I just think that goes to our makeup as as addicts and alcoholics.
Absolutely.
I mean, whatever we do, I think go beyond 100%. And when we do, we set the world on fire. And when we do poorly, we crash and burn.
We always go to excess.
But we try to perfect it along the way. Yeah. Absolutely. So going back to your cop days, now you're no longer a cop, right? What year is that?
I was on the police department from 82 to 95. And what had happened was I went up getting hurt in the line of duty, and the city was going to put me out on a disability. I was fighting with them, and so I actually went to our president of the union, the FOP, who was also in recovery at the time. He said, Bobby, he said, this is what we put our time in for. So I retired, went to school, and I had an undergrad degree. I got a graduate degree, and I got rehired 3 years later as a civilian, as a counselor for the city. So I've been a city employee for nearly 40 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
And there's like a story to that too. Do you care to share the story or no?
Well, the one thing about the education is I want to go back. So remember, I cut out of town because I was 17 because I didn't want to go to school, and my parents spent all that money. So I went to a private Jesuit high school. It's a great school, the best school in the city of Philadelphia, St. Joe's Prep.
You're a prep guy.
He's a prep guy.
I'm a Newman guy myself.
So the foundation was there. So when I went back to school, I did well. I think the foundation at the prep, and so then I got a graduate degree from Penn. And, you're an
Ivy Leaguer too?
As a graduate degree.
That is one thing I did not know, Bobby the Ivy Leaguer. Wow.
So, but so here I am in my 30s, and my last semester of the undergrad was at Temple. My last semester at Temple, actually my last year at Temple in the fall semester, I saw all these Rush flyers. And I said, you know what? I want to join a fraternity.
Oh, my God. at what, 30 or whatever?
I was 37. 37 years old, sober 10 years.
That's great.
And so I call these numbers I rip off, and I call these numbers, and I call these people up and said, listen, I'm 37. I don't drink. I want to join your fraternity. They all hang up on me. And so
Did you make your own? Because you're famous at making your own.
Well, I let it go until the next semester. My last semester, I'm walking through campus, and I see the Rush flyers again. And I said, you know what? I really got serious. I said, I didn't want to regret this. So I was persistent. So I ripped off the numbers, and I called them again, and they kept hanging up. So, but there's one call I made, and the guy was quiet at the other end. He says, why don't you come over? We'd like to meet with you. I guess they want to see if I was a unicorn or not.
Right.
So I go over to the house. They interview me, and they said, listen, we'll get back to you. And the next day, they called me and said, listen, we're going to make you an honorary brother. And then maybe, oh no, I have nothing honorary. I want to go through the Rush process. I want to do this.
Oh my God!
But I said the one thing I said, I can't move into the house. Like it's a 4-week process. The last week is Hell Week. I said I can't move into the house because I had a living girlfriend at the time. I was raising her daughter. I said I can't do that, but I'll do everything else. And they said okay. So they actually gave me a name. My pledge name was Sideshow. Now, you have to understand there's a 20-year age difference.
Sure.
So I wasn't up with what these kids were watching. So I later found out, I don't know who Sideshow was, and I found out it was Sideshow Bob from The
Sideshow
Simpsons.
Bob.
Oh, The
Yeah.
Simpsons.
Yeah.
Sideshow Bob with the crazy hair. Yeah.
So
That is awesome.
and just let me give you a plug here. Unfortunately, sometimes we hear about fraternities and sororities in the bad light, usually when there's a hazing incident or an alcohol-fueled incident. And I know that goes on. But I need to tell you, it was the best experience I got. I really had a great time. Before, it used to take me 2 or 3 minutes to go from class to class. Now I'm in the fraternity. It's taking me 10 minutes. I'm going across campus. I know people. And here it is, 25 years later, and I'm still friendly with a lot of these guys.
How about that?
It's pretty cool.
That's great.
So,
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I get rehired by the city. I'm a counselor. I'm in the health department. And one of the doctors I work with, he's a union rep. And so I got my license, and I was doing counseling on the side. So we were friendly, and then it came contract time, and the city wanted to implement a drug and alcohol policy. And so he invited me. He said, listen, would you come to our meeting? You know a little bit about this. You're licensed. I said, sure, I'll come. So I went to the union meeting. They're having a discussion. I'm not even sitting at the table. I'm sitting off to the side because I'm just a member. I have no role at all. But I can tell at the end of the meeting, the president turned to me and she said, listen, do you see what we're kind of trying to do here? I said, I do. I said, I think I could help you because I didn't tell her. I said, you guys are all over the place. So long story short, she hired me 2 days a week. So I still did the counseling in the health department 3 days a week. 2 days a week I worked at the union with the sole intent to help draft this drug and alcohol policy. And I did that for about 6 months. The policy gets adopted, and then they offer me a full-time job, and that's what I do. I'm a staff rep at the union. I do that for a couple years, and then one thing led to another. I got involved in union politics and became the president of the union.
Because you do everything to the fullest.
Absolutely.
That's just who he is. He's a fly on the wall when people are having a conversation, and within years, he's the president.
Yeah.
It's just how it goes.
Yeah, I did that. I did that for 2 terms. And then what had happened, so back up a bit, I was always single, never had children. And on my 50th birthday, I was speaking at a conference. I was out in Arizona. And on my birthday, I had a tough time. The program talks about having an inventory, and it talks about an accurate inventory. But this day, I was just comparing myself to other people, guys I grew up with who were married, had children, grandchildren, and married multiple times. All my siblings, all married children. And I had a tough time because I was feeling sorry for myself and I have a great life. My life wasn't empty. So, but the next day I said, you know what? Okay, I'll accept the fact I'll never marry. I won't have any children. And I was okay with that. Well, the old adage, you want to find out God has a sense of humor and tell him your plans.
Exactly.
So I had dated this girl. I met this girl back in my early 40s speaking. I was in Nebraska. My sponsor lived in Nebraska. And I met this girl. And we had she was a little bit younger than me, 20 years.
Just a little bit.
She was 22. I was 42. Her parents were 52.
Good Lord.
And they couldn't be any more kinder to me. And in a whirlwind romance, I ended it like an idiot because I had a problem with the age.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go back to Omaha. I would see her every now and then, and she was out of dating someone or I was dating someone. But, but it was always a regret. It was always a regret. So I was out there when I was 50. And God has a sense of humor. They have a conference out there called Luck of the Irish. And a friend of mine was supposed to speak, but he couldn't make it. I pitch hit for him. I went out there. I met her, Libby. She was the local speaker. We reconnected. We started dating. And then at the age of 51, I married my soulmate. I got November 21st of 2020. I got married. 2001.
I was going to say.
11/21/01. Trying to get the numbers straight.
Yeah.
I married my soulmate, and it'll be, we'll be married 13 years in a couple months, and it was the best move I ever made. I tell people, I love being married. The only thing, obviously I had to get sober first, because if I never got sober, I wouldn't be alive today, let alone married. But getting sober was the best move of my life. Getting married was the second best move of my life.
How about that?
And we have a great life. We have a great life.
So you plucked her out of Nebraska? Is that what you did?
Yeah. So she moved here, and she never wanted to have children, and then started hanging out with girls her age, people having babies, and then she decided, and I said, sure, and we tried, and I had some health issues, so we weren't successful at first, and then but by the grace of God, she wound up getting pregnant. We were very excited, and I was already elected in my second term as the president. So I wanted to be an active dad. I knew that I already had the pension maxed out. So at the end of my term, I was going to not run again. I told my vice president, I said, I'm going to leave. I want to be an active dad. That's what I want to do. I want to be a full-time dad. And unfortunately, things just happened. There was my wife lost a baby while in her second trimester. This was the week before Christmas of 2019. That was a tough time. March of 2020, the world shuts down. COVID. We have social unrest. It was just really crazy times. And I think I'm still grieving the loss of the baby girl. But everything else was going on. I decided to leave. I decided to retire early. I was at the age, I was 60, and I stepped down as the president because I promised my wife I was going to do this anyway, and we've already made a commitment. And I said, okay, we don't have the baby, but we'll see what God has store for us. So, but when you have a spouse who's 20 years younger, the union called me shortly afterwards, and they hired me to be the director of their EAP.
Their Employee Assistance Program.
And that's what I do now. And during COVID, because everything was shut down, I finished my schooling. And in 2001, I earned my doctorate. So
really?
Dr. Bob.
Dr. Bob.
So now it's Dr. Banjo Bob.
Dr.
Banjo Dr. Bob. Or Banjo Bob PhD.
This guy has
actually,
so many...
it's a PhD.
Oh, it's a side
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
PhD.
That's different.
Yeah, PhD required a dissertation. I didn't want to go that route because
you had to write a book.
Well, I was in my 60s. I knew I was on the back nine of my professional career. I was already a licensed clinician, so I got the Side D, and that's what I did.
Good for you.
Yes.
I always say Bob's card needs to be double-sided because he's got so many. He's got the whole alphabet after his name.
Definitely. Good for you. That's cool. All right. So tell me, Bob, here we are. Let's go back to COVID. We're talking 2020. Midway through 2020, the beginning of 2020, I always felt like it was tough for people in the program to actually continue in the program because nobody was ready for COVID. Nobody was ready for a shutdown, a lockdown. So what did you do in particular?
So at this point, I'm 32 years sober, right? And COVID shuts everything down. And so my wife, who I've already said is younger, she's much more tech savvy than me. So I didn't have meetings to go to. There was one down by the river, but it was once a week. And I've always been an active meeting maker.
Right.
So I don't have meetings, all my connections. I didn't realize how much I socialized until you couldn't socialize anymore.
Exactly.
Restaurants, diners, everything's closed. So my wife comes up to me. She says, Bobby, you going to check out one of them Zoom meetings? And I'm embarrassed to say this, but 32 years sober, talk about contempt prior to investigation. I scoff and says, that's not recovery. You got to be in a meeting and whatnot.
I felt the same way.
And then a week later, she came up to me. She said, Bobby, you going to check out one of those meetings? And what it was, she was telling me in her loving way that I was being an idiot.
You need to get to a meeting.
So I started going to Zoom and just a typical person with an addictive personality. I'm just not Zooming in Philadelphia. I'm Zooming in other parts of the country. I'm in Ireland. I'm in Australia. Right. I'm Zooming all over the world. And I really like to think that, listen, when the original program started in 1935, Alcoholics Anonymous, and then there's over 100 12-step programs today in the world based on that. But I would have to think that the co-founders were looking down on us and saying, job well done, where meetings could happen, God forbid, a pandemic gets in the way of meetings. But then I'll tell you something happened at programs, meetings. So he would allow meetings to be open, provided they take the necessary precautions. And I need to tell you that I say this, and sometimes I catch myself, it's hard to believe, COVID really helped my recovery.
Really?
It really did, because, there was a period in my life, I've always made meetings, but I was either working, president of the union, they were like 12-hour days, when I was working on my schooling, all this stuff was going on. But now with all my time being freed up, I had so much free time, I really got back, and I never got away from the program, but it was just an opportunity to make more meetings. And my particular home group now is a bunch of just great dudes. We have women too, but it's great guys. And I picked up a couple sponsees.
You're not talking about Zoom meetings. No. You're talking about your home meeting, home group.
Now talking in person,
right.
Eyeball to eyeball, knee to knee, talking to another person in recovery.
Gotcha.
And I really just got back, it just stoked the fires again. And even my wife has commented, like I said, I've always been plugged in. But when you have those other obligations, family obligations, work obligations, school obligations, it takes away, where maybe it was 3 meetings a week, but now it's like a meeting every day.
Whenever you want, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Bob, I remember talking to you in COVID, and I feel like a lot of people who I had a professional relationship with, I got a lot closer to during COVID, because I couldn't stand to be in my house long enough to continue to talk to the same 4 people. So I would just go through my phone and call everybody. And you were one of those people, and I remember being on the phone with you saying, "Hey, Sammy, I got to go. I'm headed to a meeting in Ireland." I'll never forget that.
That's great.
And I remember being like, man, I was not bought in on, 12-step programs via Zoom at the time. And I remember testing out a few. One for me was in Alaska, and it was great.
It was cool?
It was awesome. It was the best. And I remember feeling very stubborn. Just very stubborn during that time, very tried and true to the way I thought things were supposed to be done. And honestly, brother, I could say it's thanks to you, my friend. You were on fire.
Yeah, thank you.
You were on fire during that time, given all the circumstances of everything going on with the world, with you personally, on fire. It was all the time. Even when we started meeting for lunch again.
Right.
You'd be like, I got to go to a meeting in Egypt.
Right. As long as they speak English, you're good.
And he would speak at them too.
Yeah, it was funny. I remember I started accepting invitations for overseas, and I would say yes before doing the time difference calculation.
Oh my God.
So here I am. So I'm usually in bed by 9 o'clock. I'm up early, got 2 dogs. But here I'm taking naps because I've committed to meetings that are at 2, 3 a.m.
Oh, our time, right.
Like all the time.
Of course.
And I always had this fear that I was going to sleep through my commitment.
Oh my God. Well, that's cool. That's so look, the world zigs and we got to zag as far as the program. And a lot of people were very apprehensive about these Zoom meetings. And you find yourself going to a Zoom meeting in Alaska. That's great. These are tools that God gives us to maintain.
When I got sober in 88, so there's all types of different 12-step committees, and one of them was Loners International. People would write letters to the General Service Office, and they would be distributed, and you would correspond. You'd be a pen pal. But look at communication now today, which is amazing. Obviously, we don't have to be pen pals anymore because we have the technology.
You could actually FaceTime somebody from your phone.
It's pretty cool, yes.
Well, I feel like 12-step recovery digitally has held strong, true today, even in a post-pandemic world. I personally been traveling a lot lately. Don't always have the timetables to get to where I need to go. I've done 2 in the last 3 weeks.
Well, it's and we're fortunate here, like in Philadelphia. We have there's all the 12-step groups. There's at least 2,000 meetings a week. Well, what about if you live in a community where you don't have that access?
Absolutely.
You're in a remote community. Or you just have some physical limitations. Or some of our older members no longer drive at nighttime.
Right.
So I really think that Zoom helped tremendously. And I do know that there's a lot of groups that have hybrid, and I think that's fantastic. I mean, now there's definitely not an excuse not to get tied into a meeting.
100%.
Yeah, it's just something that they offer. It's just something that it makes it easier to get to a meeting, and that's what you want. You want to spread the word, excuse me, to as many people as possible. And these hybrid meetings, these Zoom meetings, it allows us to do that. And you're right, there is no excuse for not getting to a meeting, even if you live in Alaska. I mean, there's some outback places in Alaska where they got a signal, but that's basically it.
I mean, I've seen some places that Google Maps doesn't even recognize as
Exactly.
real roads and people that need help in those areas, and this is just a blessing for that.
Believe it or not, prohibition still exists in Alaska in certain villages where it's illegal to actually possess or consume alcohol.
Really?
Believe it or not. In some of the villages, they're getting on the black market when liquor is flown in, snuck in, I guess. They're getting $100 a pint or more for black market kind of liquor. So there's still addiction there, but it's just like when we had prohibition back in the 20s. There was still addiction, there was still alcoholism. It just, again, it wasn't legal.
Hey, prohibition helped the organized crime grow.
Didn't it though?
Yeah, it did.
It absolutely did. But take us up to what you're doing now.
Well, I'm still working. Most of my work is remotely, so I love that. Me and my wife, we're doing a lot of traveling. So just in the last 3 weeks alone, I've been on the road. I was in Vermont for a week, and then I went to Vegas for a professional conference for a week, and then just a couple days ago, we just got back from Colorado.
Were they pleasure trips or were they business?
2 out of 3. Las Vegas was business. We have 2 dogs. I got a little Jack Russell Terrier mix, Rosie, and I have a Pit Bull Boxer mix, Bing.
Bing?
Bing.
Very nice.
Yes. So actually, my wife had binged on The Sopranos and wanted to call Bing by another character's name. And I said, no, honey, we won't be calling it that.
Oh, no, yeah, I know.
Is it the one they killed on the boat?
Yeah, that's the one.
The one they killed on the boat.
She wanted to use that name. I said, no, we won't.
That's hilarious.
I like that.
Yeah, you can't yell that in a church.
No,
you know what I mean?
You can't yell that outside of the park.
Exactly.
So we call it Bing as in Bada. And
Bada Bing.
So my wife, who is a hairdresser, works out of the house. So I'm on dog duty, and I love it. So I go to the office when needed. Most of my work is remote, but I take the dogs out several times a day and make meetings whenever I want. I have a great life.
You are one of the most productively active human beings that I know.
Well, God is that.
I envy your life sometimes.
But thank you. And this is the one thing I want to get across the most of, right? So my addiction was 10 years, like from 17 to 27. And I'm now, sober 36 years. I really had 2 lives.
Mm-hmm.
I had the life under the influence,
sure, and
I had a life sober. And man, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And if anyone's here is listening, I encourage you. You can have the same life I have. I didn't get anything given to me, or I'm not special. I just did some work that I really didn't want to do, that I didn't really believe in. But it was a leap of faith, and my life has changed. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. If you would have told me 36 years ago to come up with a list of things I wanted to accomplish, I would have sold myself short.
Way short.
I have a really, it's a great life. It really is. And you guys can have it too. Recovery is a beautiful way of life, and it's available to anyone who's willing to take a leap of faith and get involved.
Yeah, it's like the old saying that we tell people when they walk through the doors. It's like, give us a month. If you're not happy, we'll gladly refund all your misery.
Yeah.
It's like a money-back guarantee.
Right. 100%.
And it's the truth. come on in, maybe get yourself into treatment if you need treatment, because therapy is always good, and then just kind of dedicate yourself to the 12-step program, whichever, you may be doing drugs, you may be doing alcohol. Dedicate yourself to the 12-step program, and you'll come out on the other side really in a much better place. And I look at it this way. These 12-step programs have been around, at least one of them has, for 90 years almost. Something's got to be working. You got 3 guys that together have a whole bunch of sober time. We're sitting around a mic here because of the 12-step program with a much better life. It's a stark contrast, actually, what we were and what we are now. And we still have that because it follows us around like a shadow. You know what I mean?
Right.
That addiction follows us around like a shadow. Like we always say, it's in the parking lot doing jumping jacks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm in here sharpening steel with Banjo Bobby and Sam. You know what I mean? So I ain't afraid of that parking lot guy. But it takes a little bit of work too. You know what I mean?
Well, Bob, I just wanted to thank you for coming out, brother.
Thanks, Sammy, and thanks, Vinny. And obviously,
I was really excited for this one.
Well, I've known you guys for years too, and I know you're doing walking the walk. And as I keep on repeating myself, it's a great way of life. And if we can help you, there's help out there for you anywhere. I know you guys are always available, and I really believe that's we have that responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. The responsibility is to the newcomer. The newcomer keeps the lights on, so to speak. We keep coming back for the newcomer. And, I keep coming back for all my boys, my friends. We're here for each other. We keep each other sober. We keep each other sane. And I think that's a great thing that we could all kind of take away from this. So, Bobby, it was my pleasure having you on, my brother. And Sam, as always, my name is Vinny. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
And I'm Sam, alcoholic and an addict.
Bobby?
And I'm Bobby, and I'm an alcoholic.
My man, this is Tenacious Recovery. We are coming to you from South Philly. We are a traveling podcast, and we'll be coming to your neighborhood hopefully soon. But brothers and sisters of sobriety, it's my pleasure, and God willing, we'll see you next time.